There we go. Okay. We're about to find out right now. Okay. We have 11 people right now.
Oh, that's exciting. That is exciting that they actually showed up. I'm really excited about
it. Can you see and hear me? Because that's the first question. Some people are calling in, and some people are on the computer. Both options for accessibility. Okay, most people are muted. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna back up in a second. For the people that can hear me, we're going to start in 1 minute. I just want to make sure the majority of the audience can see and hear everybody that's around. I'm going to give... Thank you for saying that, because that means I'm doing a good job.
Well, I got her actually, so this is actually beautiful to be.
Okay. Okay, we're going to begin. Thank you for chiming in. Okay. They cannot see us. Here we are. Yeah, that was burnt left. His mic is off. Okay. We're going to start now. I want to any technical difficulties. I'm the one speaking. My name is Dana Coburn. I'm the Recruitment Coordinator. If you're in, you can probably talk to me. I'm going to let our amazing graduate students introduce themselves before we start.
Hello everyone, my name is Bianca Andrews. I'm a first-year doctoral student in the Urban and Regional Planning and Design program.
Hi, I'm Brittany Long. I am a third-year Ph.D. student in the same program.
So we just want to start taking the time out of your busy day.
Doing a webinar cast. Pushing that right now. Library. Always lively, man. She's always lively. Yeah, she is.
Okay, so we will be taking live questions as this is a live chat, so please feel free to type them in. If you see me getting up, it just means I'm reading your questions. For right now, because there aren't any questions, I'm going to start us off with a question I've prepared. A lot of you have actually asked me this question before, so the list that we're going off of is something that you probably wanted to know, but maybe just aren't asking right now. So some of the questions, both of our grad students are going to answer. Other questions might be more relevant to one, so we'll just kind of see how it goes as we continue. So the first question, which definitely applies to both of you, is why did you choose University of Maryland for your graduate education?
You can start. And you can think about it.
I would say that I chose University of Maryland because I was already doing a lot of work in DC and Maryland. So I am a licensed social worker in DC and Maryland. So a lot of the issues that I was seeing directly were impacted by community planning. I'm trained in community organizing, so a lot of those things really connected for me. And one thing that drew me to this specific program was the Urban and Regional Planning and Community Planning program was actually birthed out of the social work department at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and it transitioned to be into DC. And so just knowing that it had that social work framework behind it that really puts people at the forefront of planning was something that definitely drew me to University of Maryland. And so my research focuses on gentrification and displacement, specifically for low-income renters. And there was faculty here that had specialties in that area. And there were also students here who had interest in that area as well. And I got to talk to this student right here, actually. During applications, I asked if I could speak to a student specifically, because, you know, faculty can tell us one thing, but I think students actually give us the real deal of what's going on campus, what resources are available, things that we can look forward to in the program. And Brittany and I actually spent 2 hours together when I was going through application process, and she really gave me a real view of what it would be like for me to come here. So I felt like I had already built a relationship with somebody, and I was very passionate about the work that I was doing. And so for me, that really sealed the deal for me applying here specifically.
Yay. For me, it was very different. So originally, I come from a background in architecture, so my bachelor's and my master's degree are in architecture. And I wanted to apply to a program that was more focused on the social impact of design. So looking at urban planning. And I was already at Penn State for my master's degree, so I was already on the East Coast, originally from Arizona. I had visited DC a few times and really liked the area, and so I was looking at schools. And I applied to UVA and UMD, and one of the other reasons why I chose UMD is because the faculty, like Bianca said, really sort of aligned with my research interests and sort of where I wanted to go with my career. And so that was another one of the reasons I decided to apply to UMD. Plus the program was really cool.
Awesome. So I'm going to check very quickly in a second to see if anybody's typed in live chat questions, but what I wanted to highlight first is these are two amazing graduate students right now with completely different backgrounds, interested in similar programs with different career paths. So one thing I really want to emphasize is for everybody that's listening or watching right now, you don't have to want to study the exact thing the degree says.
Yes.
The whole point of a graduate education, whether you're interested in one of our master's programs, dual degree, or PhD programs, is you can kind of create your own specialty, and you'll find people in your groups and in your cohorts that will mesh with you, even if you're not studying the exact same thing. So I am just going to see, we do not have, oh, we do have a question. Awesome. Thank you for asking your question. So this question to Bianca, what are you hoping to do after you complete your master's? Thank you.
Well, I actually have my master's already. Just to reiterate, I am a first-year doctoral student, so I'm going for my Ph.D. My master's is in social work, and I have 2 undergraduate degrees, one in criminal justice and one in psychology. So just to answer the question, after my Ph.D., I really want to go into community development. So I plan to be on the ground, actually helping communities figure out the most inclusive and equitable ways to revitalize communities without actually displacing the residents who are already there in those communities. So a lot of times you hear gentrification and it's automatically associated with a negative connotation, right? Because gentrification is known as this thing that causes displacement of original residents, mostly due to low income. And there's a high prevalence seen specifically in low income communities of color. And so what we see is a lot of times when new development comes in, it is designed to attract wealth and is designed to attract economic revenue, but it often doesn't take into consideration how we can build wealth and economic revenue amongst the residents who already live there. And I think that oftentimes the people who are doing research in these areas are not people who are most often impacted by it. So you have this issue where a lot of people who are displaced are people of color, but the people who are writing the literature about gentrification and displacement are not people of color. And so I felt like, okay, what's the best way for me to impact not only what the literature is saying, but what's being done on the ground? And oftentimes people are swayed by, okay, well, maybe people in the program might not look like me. Well, if you don't apply, then nobody in the program will ever look like you. And honestly, what I found in this program was a lot of people actually do look like me. And so I think that one of the good things about this program that prepares me for what I want to do after is that it's very interdisciplinary. And Dana kind of touched on this a little bit, but I just wanted to be a little more specific. This program is not just for somebody who comes from an architecture background or who comes from a community planning background. I have no community plan, well, I know architecture background, but I have a lot of community planning in my background, but it's not specifically stated as community planning. From organizing to working with tenants associations, from working all the way to Capitol Hill on these issues, I've done that for the last 8 years. So that's what I plan to do specifically with my degree. And I feel like UMB is preparing me very much so to be able to be effective in that realm.
And just to touch on that, a lot of the master's students I know do come from other backgrounds too. So political science, sociology, psychology, social work. And so, I mean, because planning itself is interdisciplinary, and even architecture is too, is heading that direction. We really just led to itself, and just kind of being able to go into other classes and other departments and talking to different professors and stuff about your interests. It really does work out.
Yes.
One of our names is our long title, the School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, and we have real estate development. So, but one of the things I want to touch on is we call ourselves the Maryland Built Environment School, and the reason for that is what both of these lovely ladies have just echoed is that you really can study a lot of different fields. So you shouldn't feel afraid if you don't have this background or if you don't know what you're going to do when you get here, because you probably aren't the only one. You probably aren't the only one that felt that way or started that program, and I'm sure more people will definitely feel that way in the future. It looks like we have another question. Somebody asked how long it takes a graduate school to send a decision letter. So that's a good question. That is a good question. I'm gonna have to answer that because I love these lovely ladies. The answer is it is currently in progress right now. I'm the recruitment coordinator. I also work with admissions. If you're asking for a day, I really can't specifically give you that, but the one thing I can tell you, you're welcome to email after the webinar. I'll send an email out. You can ask me a question personally, because everybody's probably thinking about this question. No, it is in progress. We are working on program decisions, applications review. I don't want to give a rough estimate because I'm not 100% sure, but I can say definitively in the next 3 to 4 weeks. You will know. If you want to know any more than that, please email me separately. I'm more than welcome to talk to you. But because this is a very large audience and everybody's in different programs, that would actually be a very complex question to try and answer. Somebody asked, Layla has asked, could you please let us know about the PhD program more? And both of you can definitely do that. Just more details about what you're studying and how exactly it works.
Okay, let's see. So I am, my advisor is Bill Along Mom. Multiple advisors. And so her focus is on suburbanization of poverty, looking at suburban redevelopment, and things like that. And so my specific research interest is in gentrification, looking at that and the ideas of displacement and community development, equitable development, things like that. So she was one of the reasons why I chose to apply to UMD, because one, she is a professor of color, and that's something that I sort of looked for when I was applying, to have that sort of connection, and also to our research interests align. And I just looked at her profile page and saw that, you know, we had a lot in common. And I spoke with her and we had a connection and stuff like that. What else is there? In terms of the coursework, there's the 4 required classes we have to take.
Yeah, there's 4 required classes. Well, technically 3 and then 1 research methods class that you can choose. And then you build the rest of your curriculum based on what you're interested in. And I think that's the most amazing part for me in particular, because I was wondering, like, okay, what kind of classes would I have to take? How could I make sure that those classes were in line with what I want to do? And this program thought specifically about those things. Like, how can we create a program where we can allow all these different perspectives to come into this program and still be able to focus on what they want, while also learning some of the core things that are involved with community planning and urban and regional planning as a whole. So at this point, I've taken classes in the communications department. That was my research course, and I was actually able to build a research design and practice coding, transcribing. So you get all of those things from different departments. Like this semester in particular, I'm taking a class in the sociology department on social movements theory. And I think that Brittany has taken classes in the anthropology department as well.
No.
No. Wait, which department is that?
Some of our other PhD students have taken classes, classes in the anthropology department.
Yes.
I've taken classes in public policy, closely aligned to planning. Some students have taken classes in, like Bianca said, communication, even geography. If you're into GIS,
Yes.
we have really good geography classes for that. What else?
Real estate development is
Real estate
also
development,
one
right.
that we're closely attached to. Also historic preservation. I have somebody in my cohort who specifically focuses on historic preservation. So literally you are able to build and design your curriculum based on how you want to after you take those 4 required courses. And I think that gives you a really good framework on the baseline of community planning for those of us who don't have a background in community planning. And then it still allows us to apply those planning practices and techniques to what we want to focus on, what particular area.
The only thing I would chime in, because you both did an amazing job, is some of you out there might be thinking about architecture, and a lot of people actually contact us about architecture, but don't realize you don't only have to study architecture.
Yeah, you know.
The Master of Architecture is a wonderful program. We have 2 different tracks, Path A and Path B. The Path A track is for those that have a Bachelor of Science and will get advanced standing, and you can ask me more in-depth questions about that after the live chat. And Path B is for people that have never done architecture before in their lives, and maybe are career changing, maybe have different backgrounds. And either way, whichever path you take, you can actually do that in duals. Not only could you do architecture and community planning, you could do architecture and historic preservation, architecture and real estate development. So architecture doesn't just mean designing buildings. It's actually a really common misconception. It's looking at design in conjunction with community and culture and economic needs, and it can partner very well as you can also do an architecture-focused PhD program if that's what you're looking into.
And I actually took a class in the architecture department last semester, so it definitely is closely aligned with community planning.
Okay, so I'm looking at the next question. We just talked about architecture and community planning. Somebody asked, how many people get into the PhD program, and what are the financial aid options in terms of tuition, grants, and assistantships that are available to you?
Great question. We all want to know about money, right? So, okay, so it differs for our specific our years, right? So my program, there are 4. My cohort has 4 PhD students. It's very competitive. However, it is very worth it. And I received a full graduate fellowship from the dean. I got a fellowship award that covers my complete tuition for my first year, so first semester and second semester, all of my classes. 9 credits is considered a full course load. Most students take between 6 and 9 credits, so between 3 and 4 classes. 4 is kind of the cap, because we also have people who work full-time, and people tell you that it's impossible to work full-time and do a PhD. It's not impossible, but I will be honest and say that it's very hard. It is difficult. So if you're thinking about it, take it from somebody that's doing it. I actually work 2 jobs, wouldn't suggest it, but I'm a full-time social worker, and I'm also an independent contractor outside of that. And I am a full-time doctoral student. The good thing about my position is it is closely aligned with what I do. So I study gentrification again amongst low-income renters, and I work primarily with low-income people all day long as a social worker. And I'm also in very diverse rooms where I'm not only talking to residents, but I'm also talking to planners. I'm also talking to transportation people, the mayor's office people, Capitol Hill people. So I'm in this beautiful realm where it's like, okay, all of this ties together. But for people who it may not work out like that, it might be a little difficult, but I think that one of the main things that you should focus on is time management. So I have a full graduate fellowship. I think they actually try to support you at least your first 2 years. But Brittany can speak a little more to that because she's been in the program a little longer than me.
Okay, so my cohort, there's 3 of us, and the cohort after mine, I think there was 4 of them. And so I guess it ranges from like 3 to 4, depending. And let's see, my specific experience, I had got the Dean's Fellowship my first 2 years. And then I also was working with my advisor, sort of on an hourly basis, based on her projects that she had. And then this third year, I'm actually co-teaching a graduate level course in our department with another Ph.D. student, and that's a 10-hour assistantship. And so it really depends in terms of assistantships on what's available, what the faculty has, what research projects and what research grants they have that's available. I know for master's students, sometimes faculty will need teaching assistants to help out, or graduate assistants with their courses. What else? I don't work full-time. My only job while as a student is either teaching now or as a research assistant my first 2 years, and that was full-time teaching or full-time research assistant. Actually, I would say my second year actually went and got another assistantship outside of our department in the university, just for some supplemental money, which could be an option too. The university itself, they have a job board for graduate assistants. We can look and see other departments that are hiring graduate assistants, so you can look in there and apply for them, and it's open to anybody. Sometimes they'll have it specific for the department, but for the most part, if you qualify and you have the requirements, you can always apply for it.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is, so we've talked about a lot of financial aid in terms of graduate assistance for master's and PhD students, so it's applicable to both. You don't have to work in the architecture school, or you don't have to work for the specific program. You can actually have a lot of different types of disciplines where even if your GA-ship is not directly relevant to your degree, indirectly you'll learn so many valuable skills for it, and it could actually open your eyes to a new career path. And I see we have more questions.
I love
So I really appreciate your time. This one we already talked about already, so I'm gonna skip that one. After you complete all the courses to graduate, can I take extra courses for my leisure, and for what price?
Yeah, you can take, so after you finish your core classes, you check with Casey to make sure that you've completed all the classes you need to. You can take classes at your leisure. Typically it's recommended that you take methodology classes because that's something that's really hard to come by. The classes for leisure is not really a thing we do in PhD, just because there's no leisure time.
Once you get done, you're not going to want to do
you're not going to want to take short classes. But yeah, the methodology ones, they're really open to us taking. And if you have an assistantship, 10 hours or a 20-hour one, those will cover a certain number of credits in terms of tuition remission. So it just depends. And if you don't have an assistantship, then you just have to pay out of pocket.
It's really just about self-care. Right. I think the bottom line that everybody agrees with is leisure classes are important, meaning electives are more enjoyable. They may not be directly relevant to your curriculum, but no matter whether you're in a PhD or master's program, self-care is important, and to some people, self-care can be exercise, eating healthy, cooking, listening to music, Netflix or Hulu. I'm just naming off random ones, but no matter where you are, what program you're in, it's going to be really important emphasis to take care of yourself. Yes. So one of the next questions, somebody asked about transferring courses before applying for the master's program. Do you know if there are financial aid opportunities for part-time master's students? So I can answer the community college question because I work a lot with transfer students, and transfer students are mainly for undergrad, but I will say for graduate students. For architecture, if you don't have a background in architecture, it would behoove you to take a drawing class at a community college. You can take it at a four-year school, but it would be very expensive, and a community college will offer almost the exact same instruction. For architecture, classes like drawing, painting, sculpture, things that are more hands-on. For other community college courses that I can't say it'll transfer, I don't promise that. I'm not an advisor. I'm a recruitment coordinator. I work with admissions, but I do not make any executive decisions towards it transferring. But if you want courses with a background for community planning, geography courses are extremely helpful. For historic preservation, anthropology courses, history courses, and then for real estate development. If you want to get a head up on real estate development, take courses in accounting, taxes, or finance. Because the one thing that people don't realize when they enter the real estate development program is you need that background.
Yes.
You need to understand economics, accounting, taxes, finance principles. And if you don't, you're going to do something called leveling courses, which means you're going to take it here before you start the rest of the degree. So it can't hurt to always start beforehand, kind of get it ready. I have read that the classes of Masters in Real Estate are given one evening a week. I would like to know what this will be like. So specifically, real estate has more evening classes. We do have programs. Some courses are offered during the day. Some are offered in the mid-afternoon. Some are offered in the evening. I can say definitively real estate and then sometimes planning or historic preservation classes are offered in the evening. And the reason for that is so you can work during the day.
Yes.
Honestly, you can talk more about working and being in school.
I was about to say, we really appreciate those evening classes. I did have one class during the day last semester though. It was at 12:40. And you know, I have a really good boss, right? So I talked to my boss about wanting to do a Ph.D. way in advance of actually applying for one. I actually talked to her about it while I was in my master's because I fortunately had the same boss for my master's and now my Ph.D. So for me, I can really only do evening classes. Like every now and again, I can push in a noon class. I can't do any morning classes. That is actually not what is best for me because of my job, but there are morning classes, not as often in the PhD, in the PhD program specifically. I can't speak to the master's as much, but for the PhD, most of them are in the evening because the majority of our students work. And some of them don't, but some of them still prefer there to be evening classes. And so what that would look like is like your classes would start anywhere after 5 o'clock. So I have a class this semester that's from 7 to 9:40. I have a class that's from 6:30 to 9, and I have a class that's from 4 to 6:40. So I think the 4 to 6:40 is actually my earliest class that I have for the whole week. Other than that, any class that's after 5 o'clock, which is typically when my workday ends, is perfect for me, and it's actually preferable. So I really like that they are intentional about making sure that there are evening classes available. And specifically for the PhD program, they make sure most of the classes are evening classes. Because
the only thing I would add is for some of our master's programs, it really depends. So I would recommend asking, meaning contacting me, or if you want to do a lot of this research on your own, all of our curriculums are on our website.
Yes.
So let's say, for example, I'm interested in the Master of Community Planning and I want to know what courses I need. Google Arch, UMD, planning. I literally tell people to Google those terms because sometimes it can be easier than looking on the website. And if you want to know what course times are, feel free to contact me. But the course catalog is open to everybody, whether you're enrolled or not. It's called, I believe, Testudo.
Yes.
So it's Testudo.
Yep.
Yeah, schedule classes. If you didn't hear that, I can type it out later. You can email me. You can see what times all the classes are.
Yep.
But I will recommend, if you want to work part-time or full-time, you need to talk to your employer before you do it. Because whenever prospective students come to me and they tell me they want to do part-time, the first thing I ask is if you've discussed it, especially if the classes are in the morning or afternoon, because you need to have a job and a supervisor that's flexible enough. If you don't, that's okay, but just recognize that you're going to have to either work different hours or change up your schedule a little bit, or you may have to go full-time for certain semesters just to recognize the course load, because some programs like our PhD and our evening programs are more geared that way, but others are not, and it kind of depends on what you're interested in. So you mentioned there are opportunities to take courses in other departments, for example, communications. What's the process to sign up for those classes? Do you need special permission?
So it depends on the course. There are some courses in other departments where you don't need special permissions. However, when you go to Testudo, which is where our schedule of classes is located, it'll tell you specifically for that course, special permissions needed if you are not in the communications department or if you're not in the anthropology department. So that way you'll know, okay, I need to reach out to this professor. And once that professor grants you permission, that professor will then tell the necessary party in their department that they need to grant you access to the course. It's literally as easy as that. When I took a course in the communications department, I think this all happened over 3 days. I emailed the professor, told her my interest, told her why I wanted to take the course. She said, we would love to have you in the course. I've had a couple of students from your program in the course before. Let me reach out to this person, they'll grant you access. Once I went to register, access had been granted, I was able to register just like that. So it typically is a smooth process, and they always tell you whether or not you need special permission. And then once they tell you that, you just reach out to the professor who's in charge of that class, because that'll also be on Testudo. It'll tell you the time, the day, and the professor, unless they haven't settled on a professor yet. So you will have full access to that, and you just reach out to that person. That's been my process, and it's been smooth each time.
And sometimes there'll be prerequisite requirements too.
Yes.
And if you've met those, sometimes the teacher will ask just for proof that you've taken a class or taken prereqs. May not be from that specific department, it could be from a different department, but for the most part, when I took my advanced methods class in the sociology department, the prereq was to have taken a basic research methods class. And so I just had to, send over my syllabus for that class that I took, and I was approved and was able to take the class. So it really is it's pretty smooth process, especially for PhD students.
But one thing I would add is that if a professor does not feel like that course would be the right course for what you're interested in, they will also tell you, so that you don't waste your time taking a class that's not really going to be applicable to what you're trying to do. So I did have a course like that too, like last semester, well, for this semester actually, I was trying to take another research methods course, and I was looking at multiple different departments, and once I explained, and I love that they ask you like, what are your interests? Well, how do you want to apply these things? Once I explained that, some professors was like, well, I don't really think this might go well with your course. You can talk to your advisor about it and see. But once I was able to, and they give you the syllabus. So that's one thing I would suggest you doing. Any class that you want to take that's outside of your department, ask the professor, can they provide the syllabus? Because that way you can send the syllabus to your advisor. Your advisor will look over the concepts and then let you know if those concepts will be applicable for what you're doing. So there was some courses that I was trying to take that my advisor was like, this wouldn't be applicable to you, and you're actually doing something that you've already done before. So I wouldn't recommend you taking this course, and that saved me some mistakes because we don't get a lot of courses. So especially in the doctoral level, you don't get a lot of courses. So you really want to be strategic about what you're selecting at this level specifically, because there's not as much wiggle room as there is in like a master's or undergrad.
And for the master's program, some of the curriculums are pretty strict. I'm going to give an example. Your architecture studios, you have to take those. The studios are not optional, they build on each other. Some architecture graduate courses are electives, but some of them, like history of architecture or structures, those are going to be required if you don't have the background. But another example would be like in community planning or historic preservation. Historic preservation has a dual degree with anthropology. So if you're not doing the dual degree, that's okay, because you could take anthropology courses and it would work towards historic preservation. So we implore you to look at every program with a critical eye and then contact me, or I'll have you contact the program directors. If you have any specific questions, how big are the classes? So I can tell you that's a really hard question to answer because we have so many programs. How big are your PhD courses?
So I will say I've had classes from like 5 people in a PhD course to, and the thing about PhD courses, when you don't have a background in like community planning or architecture, you can take some master's level courses, but higher up master's level courses. And so then you would probably have a little more people in your class. So my first PhD course was 6 people. And then my my master's course that I took, which still applies to my actual PhD, I think it's 13 of us in that class. So I would say there's not typically like 30 people in a class. In my experience being a PhD student, I don't know for sure about the master, so I won't speak to that. But for us specifically in our PhD, it typically is smaller more hands-on classes. For people who like to have direct contact with the professor, you get that. They're very attentive to you. So if you don't do those readings, they will know because the classes are small. And like there's, I think more, for me, more robust discussion because you have 6 people bringing multiple perspectives into the room because we all have different backgrounds and different focuses. And so you really get to get into the nitty gritty about what you're studying, what the readings were about, how they apply to different areas. But it typically for us in the doctoral level are smaller, on the smaller side, class-wise.
Even the master's programs, and I'm also gonna, the person who asked about studio culture, I'm gonna address that in this answer with the class size. The studios have to be small, and here's why. The studio culture here is honestly like a family. I'm just gonna be pretty honest. I'm a recruitment coordinator and I'm not an architect, but I see these people every day. And I see them at all times of day. And this is not just architecture. This is honestly the whole school where it's a small enough building and it's a small enough program that I know a lot of the graduate students by name. I just ask them how they're doing. Maybe they're in architecture, but maybe they're in the Ph.D. or planning. Specifically with architecture, the studios are small. Oh my goodness. For the graduate studio, I think there's maybe 10 to 15 people in one group. The largest I've seen is 20, and that's rare. It's typically between 10 to 15 or less. And our culture is we give feedback, we're direct, we're honest, but we're respectful. We're tolerant, we respect all opinion. And one of the things our program is really proud of is we look at inclusivity in our design. It's not just designing something for aesthetics, it's designing something for accessibility, for all cultures and backgrounds, for various populations that might have different disadvantages, because since we have people from so many different backgrounds, it's included in the design. And there's so many examples I could go through. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, which is somebody that's really interested in studying disability access and looking at how to respect ADA laws for accessibility. And
a project on that now.
See, exactly. But one thing that's really cool about that is when I see disability, a lot of people's heads automatically jump to physical disability. I can see it. And some really cool research that's being done here is there's actually something called neurodiverse disabilities and invisible disabilities, which is just because you can't see it or may not notice it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's a really beautiful avenue that not only our architects are looking at, but our PhD and planning students are looking at, because how can you really support and service a community if you don't actually understand what their needs are?
Exactly.
So I just wanted to chime in with that before we go to the next question and recognize whatever field you are studying, there are so many different lenses, and we really have a passion here for social justice, community, security and safety, as well as overall health and wellness, emphasized in all of our programs. Are assistantships the only financial aid that the department is offering for master's students? I'm gonna.
Oh, you gonna answer?
You can too.
Okay, so I was gonna say no, only because like your well, specifically for the doctoral program I can speak to, our professors are literally sending us different grants, fellowship opportunities, postdoc opportunities every day. Like my email, some things don't even apply to me, but they want me to know about them because when they do apply to me, I will already have known that they existed. So you can definitely look for grants outside of the department. Now, for our department in particular, our professors do a great job at sending us all of anything that comes to them that might remotely reflect money or finances. They push it on us. And also, you know, there's a level of accountability for the student as well. We also look for grants outside of our department. We also look for assistantships, research assistantships outside of our department. Because you, as a doctoral student specifically, I can say this for graduate students, there is some level of independence.
Yes.
There's a lot of independence in this program. So you will be expected to not only just depend on what may be sent to you or offered to you, but also looking at where you're trying to go and seeing what's already out there for those particular things, like volunteering at conferences, putting your research out there, seeing what kind of grants are being funded specifically for your area of work. Because there's a lot of organizations out there that support academia and that support research in certain areas. So if you're intentional about, okay, the MacArthur grant looks at this thing or looks at that thing, you can really get a lot of financial just assistance out of doing work both in tandem with your department and independently outside of the department.
The only thing I would add is graduate students are definitely one of the most popular forms of financial aid, but it's not the only type. I'm going to echo everything you just said, and the only thing I'll add is there are scholarships that are need-based and merit-based.
Yes.
So keep in mind, this is not going to be offered to everybody because for the most part, it's solely at the discretion of the faculty and staff that are reviewing your applications. I don't review anything. I love helping everybody, but I don't make any decisions. I don't review, so I really can't answer those questions. But the one thing that I can tell you is there is, in addition to merit aid that can be awarded, there's need aid. If you think you'll financially need it, it kills me every time people don't apply for FAFSA because you legitimately don't know. And if you don't know, don't assume no.
Yes.
If FAFSA is eligible for you, that's wonderful. Please apply for it. If you are not eligible for FAFSA, there's still so many scholarships you can research that are international that have nothing to do with whether you're an American citizen. There's so much money out there, but a lot of graduate school self-advocacy. And something I want to echo what both of our amazing PhD students have said is we have advisors, we have support staff, we have a student services team here to assist you, but it really is self-driven by you. I am not going to remind you constantly when the deadline is, when to make an appointment. What does this mean?
None of them are.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
We are all resources for you, and you're welcome to ask us questions. But a lot of graduate school is very self-directed and very self-paced in terms of what you want to study. Deadlines, research and conferences, papers, and the final thing I'm going to add that nobody's asked about yet is oral presentations.
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't realize whatever program you're in, any of the ones we just mentioned, you're gonna have to orally present at some point, whether it's a master's thesis, whether you're presenting research, whether you're just presenting something for a class.
Yes.
If you're somebody that's more extroverted, cool, keep rolling with it. If you're somebody that's introverted or doesn't like speaking in front of crowds, and that's honestly completely okay because we see people from all backgrounds. We're gonna work with you. You're gonna practice. I have an ambassador program, and these are two great examples of my lovely ambassadors who are literally doing this because they're amazing and kind people, but also because they want to practice their public speaking skills. This is one really cool example that we won't just work with you under degree in your program, we'll work on self-improvement and how to communicate orally as well as written communication, because it doesn't matter what field you're in. I'm not even talking about handwriting because mine is horrible. I'm talking about physical typing and being able to communicate cogent and logical ideas. And if it's in architecture, I need to understand why you did that design. If it's in planning, you need to be able to technically write why you made those decisions. And just keeping that in mind that it's okay to not have an amazing background in it, but be prepared to put the work in.
I would just add one more thing, like really don't be discouraged about scholarships that might require an essay or something like that, because that's going to be practice, because you're going to be doing a lot of writing in the PhD and the doctoral program. So if something asking for a 1 to 2 or 3 page essay, just take the time to do it. You cannot imagine how many programs reach out to us because nobody actually applied. And they have this money to give, but nobody wants to take the time to just fill out the application and write a brief essay. So I would say don't be discouraged by that. Really take advantage of all sources of income that's out there.
So this is a question that I'm going to answer now, and even though it was very specific, I'm going to generalize it out. Some people have been asking me in the live chat as well as email and calling if I have a background in blank, if I have years of work experience in planning, if I have a certificate or a minor in architecture. The two questions I get really commonly are, is this going to transfer and is this going to help me in my program? I can very much answer number 2. I cannot answer number 1. So for the person that specifically asked about the historic preservation certificate, it will help you immensely, because to even have a little bit of a background in these programs makes an enormous difference, because your frame of reference means you have perspective. It doesn't mean you're going to know everything about that field, or you may not be able to bypass certain classes, because the honest answer is wherever you're getting that degree, that work experience, that program from, it's very difficult for faculty and staff to evaluate. It doesn't discount your experience. I'm still congratulating you, because if you have that much experience before this, go you. That really shows your self-development, that you're willing to put the work in. But in terms of transferring, my frankly pretty honest answer is I don't know, but probably not. Just because a lot of curriculums vary from place to place. We don't know how to evaluate a lot of times those courses in relation to ours. And a lot of people ask me for real estate development. If I am working in real estate, can I waive courses? And the answer is no, because working as a realtor or a developer is extremely different from getting a graduate degree in it.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that your perspective is not going to inform you, because we have a lot of people that are working and come back to school, especially in the field, and it actually helps them so much with their degree because they have a lot of frame of reference in mind. So we applaud you and go get that money if you're working right now and applying, but we legitimately cannot promise you that it will transfer over and work in terms of credit in any ways. We can promise you that it will help your wallet and it will help your frame of mind, because a lot of these classes do require, I don't want to say high level thinking, but thinking outside of the box is what I would say, which is something that you really don't learn from school as much as you learn from working.
Exactly. Yeah, I would definitely agree with everything Dana just said. Like, just being a person that comes from a background in community organizing and then understanding how that directly related and correlated to planning was very, very informative for me and how I'm able to navigate. But there were also things that I didn't understand about planning, even thinking about the background theoretical frameworks of planning. Those were still things that academically, as a researcher who is expected to be an expert in this field after graduating with a Ph.D., those were things that I had to be intentional about learning and focusing on. So yes, an abundance of expertise is always nice to bring to the table, because you bring that practicality but you introduce it to theory, especially on this level, because you have to be able to inform how theory is actually informing your practice. So I would definitely say that yes, it is always lovely to have experience, but as an academic, you have to also have that theoretical background.
Yeah. The next question that was asked was, somebody asked, how does a 9-month financial assistantship work? And I'm also going to add, what are the different types of assistantships and how do they factor into your life and when you work and time?
Okay, I'll start.
Sure.
Anyways, so my assistantships were both 9 months. And the way that it works is it starts in August. I would say, I think 2 weeks before the semester starts. And then 2 weeks after the semester ends. But you don't get paid during the summer, which is the bad part. So you have to find a summer job or a temporary job. And a lot of times what I would do, what I had done is either reach out to professors and be like, hey, do you have any research going on in the summer that I can be a part of? Or, you know, this past summer I worked at the American Planning Association as a research intern, and that's something I sought out myself. And that's a job that I, looked at myself to do in terms of professional development, in terms of, research development, things like that. And so the 9 month is really just for the semester, or for the year, sorry.
For the academic year.
Yes. In terms of the summer, it's really up to you to find funding. Self-sufficient. I mean, you have to be independent in that. But they also do offer like 12 months?
Yes.
12
So
months.
the 3 options are typically 9 months, 10 months, and 12 months.
That's right.
The most popular options that I have seen across university departments, not just here, are 9 month and 12 month, just because 10 month is a little odd to only not be working 2 months in terms of logistics. But 2 things that I will add, because you are amazing with that, is for 9 month, you are expected to work over the winter. And the reason why I want to say that is because a lot of graduate students are confused, meaning a lot of colleges have winter break off. But that does not mean that you, as a graduate student, you might have winter break from classes. But our GAs came back to work in the winter. You could have ideas that maybe you're doing research, or maybe you're teleworking, or maybe you're only coming in a few times a week. And I will say, we do close for university breaks. You are not working 24/7, 365. Holidays are typically closed. The university has specific holidays, and you aren't expected to work. But if you have a 9 month, you are expected to work in the winter. And if you have a 12 month and you want to go on vacation, you have to recognize that you do have obligations and responsibilities. And in terms of funding, that if you don't have a 12-month GA, it would be great to obviously have a job at a university, but any way you can make ends meet. Nobody's judging you. Nobody cares. People work literally everywhere for pretty much any job you can find. It just makes me sad when graduate students don't prepare for that. If you know you have a 9 month, please don't wait until 2 or 3 weeks before to find a job. Be aware of that, because if you know how long it takes to apply to grad school, Imagine how long it takes to apply for a job, no matter how many qualifications you have, just because it takes time, you have to be organized, and the bottom line is it's not impossible. You really just have to be organized, put the work in, and be willing to do it. Somebody asked if there are internships for international master's students. The internships are not restricted by your residency or your citizenship whatsoever. I feel like I can go more into it, but I feel like we've talked so much about assistantships. The only thing I will say are sometimes there can be restrictions in terms of visa with certain jobs. And the best example I can think of is there are some government agencies that will not hire people that do not have a green card or U.S. residency citizenship. But if you know that, don't apply to them. Meaning, it doesn't mean they don't exist. It typically means that those jobs either require security clearance or due to federal regulations that have nothing to do with our school. You have to do that. But a lot of our assistantships and financial aid is not dependent on whether you're international or out of state or in state. It's really just what you're applicable for and what you want to find. For the masters, on average, how many years of work experience do students have? I'm going to open this up to PhD students as well. How many years of work experience did you have before you applied for your PhD?
So, I'm like the out of the box person that don't apply to most people. I worked through high school, I worked through undergrad, and I worked through graduate school. So I've never not worked actually through school. So I feel like I'm like that outlier person that's like, I worked the entire time. So I definitely came in with an abundance of experience in the job field. But I also know people who had never worked until they started their PhD or until they started their master's. So I can't speak to that, but I can say that I've been working since I was 15 years old. And I have been working ever since then. There was no point in my educational career that I was not working at the same time. When I was in undergrad, I was working 2 jobs. In my master's, I was working 2 jobs. And in my PhD, I worked 2 jobs. So there has not been any point in my life where I was not working at the same time that I was going to school.
How many years of applicable experience?
So applicable experience, I would say that I've had about, wow, I've been in school for a long time. Applicable experience, I would say that I had about, before I started this, probably about 3 or 4 years of applicable experience. Only because my internships were also like very tailored to what I wanted to do. And there were often times where I got to work for those internships after, like during the summer. So after I had already interned for them, they actually hired me to work for them. And I worked on the ground a lot. So between community organizing and training community organizing, I've worked at domestic violence safe houses, sexual assault safe houses. I've also worked in shelters for women and children. I worked in low income areas, and I worked all through my master's as well. I worked in higher education as well with lower income students of color. So all of those things were applicable to what I'm studying in my PhD, and what I studied in my master's.
And what about for you?
I actually didn't have any year. Oh, okay. Let me take that back. I didn't have any years of applicable professional experience before applying to this program. So I did have experience working 2 years in an assistantship for my master's degree, and that was a research assistantship. But prior to that, I had 0 experience in architecture and 0 experience in planning.
See, it exists.
And now I have years of experience, based on my assistantships that I've had here, and now working, during the summer and those jobs. So, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, it definitely differs.
I wanted them both to answer because they are 2 very different examples of how you could do it. I will say, based on people that I talk to in terms of statistics, for the master's programs, the average person, and I'm going to caveat average because there is no age limit and it really doesn't matter. I'm just giving you statistics that I know off the top of my head. Most people apply after 2 years of work experience because a lot of them, if it's from college to master's, are just burned out. They're tired. They don't want to be in school that long and that consistently, so they'll work for a year or 2 and then they'll come back. For our PhD students, I really don't have statistics because there's too many outliers.
Yeah.
Some of our PhD students will come back after 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Some of them might be making complete career changes after 10 to 15 years. So if I made a statistical plot, it would legitimately just the scatter plot would be everywhere. So for the PhD, it's so individualized. For the master's program, even though 2 years is an average, we do have people that are applying straight out of college. We do have people that are applying 5 to 7 years after.
Yeah.
The reason the more common term is work experience is because for our master's programs, people just want more time. They don't want to apply immediately. Some of them may not be sure what they want to do, and applying to a master's program and paying for something you're not certain of is not very attractive. Right. So I offer these all at you so you can think about it when you're applying in terms of financially, emotionally, and physically. What is the best decision for you? Yeah. It is 6:57, so we have one more question that we're going to answer, and then any other questions, I'm going to type an email that you can send to. If you have a question specifically for either of our ambassadors, say your names again.
I'm Bianca Andrews.
I'm Brittany Wong.
Please write their names so I can email them. I will happily ask them. If you don't tell me who you're talking to, I don't know how to connect them. The last question is for the masters on how many years of work experience do students have, so most people aren't fresh out of undergrad. I feel like I answered this a little bit, but the only thing I will echo is it is a majority of people that are fresh out of undergrad. It's really, really mixed. We have master's programs. We have 4 different programs in our school, but you can also do a master's within each other in a dual. You can also do master's programs in dual programs outside of our School of Architecture, such as anthropology. A brand new one is public health, health administration, information science.
Yes.
I can keep going, but we have 15 dual degrees and I don't want to be here for the next 10 minutes. Yeah. The point is, it's really just what you're interested in. And some people are fresh out of college, wherever they're coming from, US or not, but some people aren't, and we recognize that. And the only thing I will say as a positive point is if you're not fresh out of college, you have a really unique perspective. Yeah. You understand how the world works a little bit. You're more practical. You also have money saved up. Yep. If you are out of college, you probably don't have money saved up. You don't have that real world experience. And also, it's okay.
Yeah, no, we both came straight out.
Yeah.
Well, I know I started straight out of my master's, this PhD program.
I did not.
Yeah, I went straight into 2 different perspectives.
So nothing is positive or negative. It's me just honestly laying it out so you can think about it. The final thing I'm going to add on to before we head out, because we want to thank you so much for your time. The final question that I want to ask both of you is, what advice can you give to people that have already applied and are making a decision to come here, or are thinking about applying but aren't sure?
Which one do you want to take?
You can take either one. It can be one to each.
I was thinking about applying.
Okay.
You want to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to take the first one. For those of you who are thinking about applying, the best advice I can give you is to please reach out to people that are already in the school. Make sure you go through the faculty listing. Make sure that there's a faculty member who at least has any kind of specialization or experience in what you're interested in. It will definitely help with mentorship and guidance. It's not to say that nobody here can have it, but it would definitely help you be more successful and tailor who you're working with a lot more if you do look into those things in advance. And also, I would say reach out to the department chair and ask, is there a student that I can talk to? Because a faculty member will give you a very different perspective than an actual student will. And that's something that I'm saying from experience. When I reached out to the program, I did all of these things. I looked at the course curriculum. I looked at what type of course I did, right? I looked at what type of courses would be available. I reached out to the department chair. I actually prepared a whole Word document of 15 questions that I wanted to ask him. So I set up a meeting and we stayed on the phone for an hour going through all 15 of my questions. And then at the end of that, I also asked if I could speak to a student, and he paired me with Brittany. We spent 2 hours talking about the program, things that I should know, things that I may not have been aware of that I should consider. And then I also had a number of people take a look at my personal statement before I actually submitted it. So I think honestly it was ripped up probably about 3 times. So I would not wait to the last minute to prepare your statement of purpose. You really want, because at the graduate level, especially at the PhD level, it's so competitive, and you want to make sure that you're giving yourself time to have people who have already accomplished and achieved those things look over your work, look over your writing, read your statement, and just give you feedback.
And so if you've already applied and you're thinking about, whether or not to accept, or, to come to the school, your admissions, I would say some of the same things that Bianca was saying. So, again, reach out to existing students, get their perspective on what exactly, the program entails, what their experiences are. If you're going to be a master planning student, there's SPA, which is a student organization on campus and in our department. You can reach out to any of the number of folks that are members of that organization to give you a bit more idea of what practice looks like. If you're going to be a PhD student, you can reach out to any one of us.
And we love it.
Yeah, I enjoy helping students decide what they want to do with their lives.
Yes.
I think it's really important because my experience is very different. And just helping people navigate these things is really important too, because I don't really ask about things.
And we're first generation, so we're both first generation.
Right. Yeah. And so paying it forward, I think that's one of my sort of advice. I think another thing to do too, if you can, just try to do a campus visit.
Yes.
Just to get a feel for, the campus climate. Is it something that you can, are you comfortable with it?
Do you like it?
Do you like it? Some students are more familiar with more urban campuses. And UMB College Park is very suburban and lots of land and lots of walking.
Lots of walking.
Campus is very spread out. And so if you're used to like more, urban city campuses, and you might be in for something completely
it's
different.
big. Oh my gosh. I came from a smaller university for undergrad. I got a little bigger for grad school, but this is like huge for me. So I visited this campus like 5 times before I actually applied, just to make sure. And then after I applied, I visited it probably like 2 more times after that.
Yeah, and another thing is just really, reach out to the department chair and make that contact. I know Casey, who's the department chair for PhD program and for the master's community planning, like he's really responsive and willing to help anybody who has any questions about anything. And I don't know about the other departments, but I'm assuming they're all very responsive.
I can respond to that because I work with all the program directors. The program director of Brian Kelly in architecture loves it when people email him or call him. He does not love it when people assume things and then call Dana, and then Dana has to explain why Brian Kelly said no. So the best description is you can contact me, but I'm honestly going to send you to the program director like 80% of the time. So if you don't know who they are, I'm happy to give them to you. But if it's a question that you have specifically for the program director, their information is all on the website. Brian Kelly for architecture. Casey Dawkins is PhD in planning. Maria Day Marshall is a real estate development director, and Dennis Pope is historic preservation. I can share that with you another time, but they welcome your questions. The final 2 things I'm going to emphasize before we end, and thank you so much for your time, is you can visit us. If you can't physically visit us, I do offer Skype calls. I also offer phone call appointments because I recognize it can be a barrier financially for people to come to fly down here. I do recommend you do it at least once. Please don't say yes to a school without going to it. You don't know how it will turn out or how you'll feel. But if you are local, or if you're not local but willing to come visit, I have appointments 3 times a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 5 p.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays, 3 to 5 p.m. on Fridays, to accommodate, because that's during our studio time for architecture, and for anybody else, there's always people around the building. You'll get a one-on-one session with me. I'll give you a tour. I do this all the time, so feel free to contact me for an appointment. And the final deadline I would like to go over, because there is confusion, is for all of the programs except for real estate development, the deadline is always one time. We only have one admission cycle, and I'm telling you this now because you're probably going to ask me again, and that's okay. But I don't want you to miss the fall deadline and then ask me why you couldn't apply in spring. Because people are doing that right now from this cycle, and the answer is we don't offer that. I'm sorry. The deadline is always going to be in January. I believe it's January 15th, 2021. there's any changes, I'll let you know, but it's 99% sure January 15th, 2021. So if you know that and you want to apply, my typical recommendation is 4 to 6 months ahead.
Yes.
Please don't
Start
wait
planning,
till the
please.
last minute, especially if you want to apply for a dual degree. You might have more than one application aspect to consider.
Yeah.
And if you want to apply for the PhD, you have to consider a writing sample. And you have to
telling
consider so many other aspects that people don't realize until they look at the website or call me and I spell it out for them. So you don't have to apply right now. Obviously, the one exception is if you're looking at the real estate development only, they do have a spring admission, and I'm happy to talk about that. For the majority of this chat, though, you're looking at next January, so please plan accordingly.
Yeah.
I'm going to sign off, but one thing I will do before I end is, first of all, round of applause for our amazing ambassadors, and thank you for coming to the chat.
And being so lively,
Yeah.
great question.
The email I am typing right now is how you can contact us for any questions. So everybody should be able to see this right now. The email, to spell it out, is arch, ARCH, admissions, ADMISSIONS, @umd.edu. That email is checked multiple times a week. Your request will be responded to typically within a week unless there's high volume. And we will answer any questions you have. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We're going to sign off. Have a great night. And my final note is being recorded, so it will be released if you want to look at it again or have any other questions in the future. Have a good night.
Have a good night.